friend Sherry Weddell. It's wonderful to have you with us today.
Well, thanks for being here. It's a great opportunity.
Sherry, your book, Forming Intentional Disciples, has garnered a lot of attention. Many people are talking about what is it about the book and what you discuss in there that has really piqued the interest of so many Catholics.
You know, I wish I knew. Actually, seriously, nobody could be more surprised than I was, or my publisher, or what people tell me is, they said it's like you read my diary. It's like you were present at every conversation I've had on this topic in the last 4 years. And I think part of it was that we spent 15 years on the road listening to ordinary Catholics all over the United States and other countries about their lived experience of God and what they actually themselves were living. And that was the basis for writing the book, and I think that's the power of it. That's what God seems to be using. But honestly, nobody, absolutely nobody, expected it. So,
if someone in a parish read this book and they said, I want to do one thing with it, what could they do in their parish with what they've learned?
Wow. We basically talk about 4 basic things to do in the early stages for a parish. First is prayer, organized prayer for the spiritual renewal of your parish. So bring people together, maybe in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and have them begin interceding for the work of the Holy Spirit in your parish. That makes a huge difference. And then break the silence. There is a de facto functioning silence in many, many parishes, and we've worked in hundreds of them, about discipleship, about Jesus even. One of my friends said it's like Jesus is he who must not be named. Catholics don't go there. We treat him like he's Voldemort in a Harry Potter film sometimes. And but we want to start talking about the possibility of personal relationship with Christ, you know, his call to follow you, making that choice, etc. So you've got to break the silence in as many ways as you can. Parishes that evangelize have multiple ways that people can encounter Christ in the midst of the parish. And that could be retreats, it could be, you know, sort of famous programs like Alpha or Christ Life. It could be any number of things, but you want to have multiple ways for people to do that. And you have to expect conversion and plan for it. You have to act like conversion is normal. And that is a huge thing in our parishes, because in practice, we typically sort of operate as though it's really unusual, really rare, and because God zapped that person. But we don't expect this to be normal, so we don't organize our life around how do we facilitate this for everyone.
When you say that we have to expect conversion, we have to plan for it, what do you mean by that? What does that look like in the parish?
Well, for one thing, it means that if you're putting on an evangelizing event, you realize that most people will not come out of a single experience as disciples. Why? Because, again, it's this journey, and most people are starting pretty far back, and they have questions. We're discovering on the road that people have issues and questions that we didn't anticipate. Things like, what do you mean I can have a relationship with God? Nobody's ever talked to me about that before. Now that you've mentioned it, I don't even know if I want that, because it's scary. Who knows what will happen if I open the door to that? So we want to keep pushing them along, and they're back there wrestling with this most basic issue. So we're discovering that only a small minority typically go through a single experience and make the whole, you know, depending on where they start, come out as disciples. But most people move. In other words, they may move from distrust to trust, or trust into curiosity. And that for them is a kind of conversion experience. Each one of these are mini conversions. And you're actually responding to God's grace, and it takes spiritual energy to respond, to open yourself to this new possibility. And so if we're serious, we have to be aware that a lot of them will come out somewhere along the continuum, but they're not yet disciples. If we're planning, we know that we're going to be able to understand, sense where their journey is, where they're coming out, and we have plans in place not to drop them, but to help them continue the journey.
It's interesting that you haven't really mentioned the pastors necessarily, but that a lot of this can happen without the priests sort of explicitly leading it.
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, some of the parishes we work with have gone through dramatic changes, and the primary movers, long-term carriers of the flame, have been lay people, not the pastor. Now, in an ideal world, of course, the pastor would be on board, everybody would be on board, right? And they'd be working together, collaborating. But it doesn't always happen like that. But you and I, as lay apostles, when we were, this comes with our baptism, okay? We are apostles in our own right, anointed by Christ in baptism for participation in the church's mission, overall mission of evangelization, which takes different forms for different people. But yeah, absolutely. You don't need permission to share your story of encountering Christ. You don't need permission to listen to other people's story in the parish, outside the parish. You know, and most of us, of course, this will happen. It can happen in the workplace. It can happen in our families. It can happen with our friends. We're secular apostles. We're apostles to the marketplace, most of us. So, yeah, but I think part of it is just taking, part of what happens when somebody moves into that space where I now think of myself as being sent by Christ. I'm an apostle in my own right, which just means a sent one. That there's something about the authority, the sense that comes when people get that sense and they realize they have some responsibility and therefore some authority. It's very interesting when you approach your pastor as a fellow apostle. Not that, I mean, pastors can still say, you know, no, I'm not interested. Of course, they have the final say in the parish, but they can't. They do not have authority over your outreach in the community. It comes with our territory. It comes with our office, if you will, in the church. So we are secular apostles. And so I would say, you know, tell your story. And what is very exciting is increasingly we're running into pastors. I mean, I'm doing lots and lots of clergy days now. And so we're talking to hundreds and hundreds of pastors who are really intrigued themselves and frankly are desperately looking. They would rise up and call you blessed if you came up to them and said, can I help? Because they're dying. They desperately need lay collaborators and they know it. And they're on the outlook. So if you're reading, by the way, if you haven't read Forming Intentional Disciples, I would strongly suggest you do it. It gives you so much background, but then, you know, kind of bring your book with you and just sort of say, hey, I just read this, it was really intriguing. I didn't know if you've heard of it. You might be surprised, but even if they haven't heard of it or read it, you know, just share really quickly why you found it useful and helpful. I think the conversation is changing. It's changing at the level of the whole church's life in this country, and I think you might be surprised to discover how much openness there is out there. I am seeing things now that I didn't even dream was possible 5 years ago. Really, there has been a dramatic change. I think God is doing something new in our generation, and you know, the only way to find out is to ask the question.
Well, I want to thank you for being an instrument of God and an agent of that change that we're seeing in the culture and the parishes through the work that you're doing and sharing your wisdom and your experience through your book and the work that you continue to do. So thank you very much, Sherry.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.